Productive Pastor 37, How to Design an Effective Study Retreat. What's going on, y'all? We're back. Productive Pastor episode 37, and we're doing something a little bit different for this month. You might be saying, okay, Chad, what's going on here? New year, all this kind of stuff. Couple things. Number one, like many people do, you really think about what do you want to be happening going on for the new year, all of those sorts of things. And I've been thinking deep about the podcast, going back and looking at my analytics over the last year, seeing what episodes y'all loved and see which episodes just kind of flopped a little bit. And so I wanted to take a month to kind of get some headway on some things. And so I needed a month to not be making new episodes of the podcast. But also, you might not know this, but Productive Pastor stretches back to 2014. We had almost 100 episodes of a previous version of the show. And I hear from people all the time that say, Chad, are we ever going to hear the old episodes again? And I say, maybe. We'll just wait and see. And it's kind of more complicated than that. But I've been digging into the archives. And for the next month, what we're going to do is I'm going to highlight some fan favorite episodes from the previous iteration of Productive Pastor. So that's super exciting. Today we're going to have an episode about how to design an effective study retreat. It's a really cool episode, very action focused, that sort of thing. Now, with this comes a couple of caveats. This is an old episode. This is 5 years old. I think it came out in 2017. You'll hear me talk about show notes. You'll hear me talk about other things, other old episodes, that sort of stuff. And just going to ask you to discount that when that comes up. I'll be back on the backside of this for any sort of thing you might need like that. But let's just enjoy some vintage Productive Pastor today. Our main conversation today is about developing and creating a study retreat. And I'm excited to go on one of these in just a few days now. I think I'll leave in 5 days. And so I'm going to talk to you about the pre-work that you need to do for these sermon retreats, for these study retreats, but then also for the during work that you do in the study retreat. A couple of things before we jump into this is something heavily influenced my decision of what to do on this study retreat. There's an article that I shared in a couple of places in the last week and a half, 2 weeks. I'd already booked the study retreat and kind of put it in my calendar, but Brian Jones wrote a blog post called How to Finish Your Sermon by Monday. And full disclosure, at first I saw this and I was like, I'm going to read this and I'm going to be so against this. I thought that it was going to not be an advocate for long-time sermon preparation and just what I would consider to be healthy preparation. But it was the exact opposite. And he advocated for things that I've actually talked about a decent amount in other episodes, especially on Productive Pastor, episode 40, creating a sermon preparation calendar. And so if you've not read this article from Brian Jones yet, go to the show notes, revchadbrooks.com/PP73, and check out this article. And then, because this is what he's talking about, he said it's to do the work that you need to do before you get to the week of the sermon. And that you're spending a large block of time on Monday morning writing your sermon for that week, doing the final work. And that kind of fits my schedule because I typically don't necessarily take Monday mornings off, but let's just say I don't put real pants on until the afternoon on Mondays. That might be a very nice way to describe what Monday mornings look like for me. I typically read a bunch on Monday morning and do sermon work on Monday morning, and it's very casual. But now I have a 5:30 a.m. guys group on Monday morning, so I'm up and aware and awake early in the morning. And because this is what's going on, so I decided to take a sermon retreat because I wanted to get far out, and I wanted to not be stressing on week of for what my sermon was going to look like. So here's how I've been planning a study retreat and how I think is a healthy way to go about it. Because here's the thing. I went on a study retreat a few years ago, took a full week, and in theory it worked, but I really doubt how much I actually got done because I went to this cabin that I had access to that was in the middle of nowhere. It was like a 25-mile drive to a gas station to get a honey bun and some, gas station, some chicken fingers or whatever. And I just brought as many books as I could fit in a couple of boxes in my truck and just didn't go into it with really an idea besides I wanted to work on some sermons. I did not want to repeat that. I did not want to waste this time. So pre-work, some talking points, and during work and some talking points. So pre-work, come up with a plan and some goals. Don't go into it just thinking, I'm going to work on some sermons and work on some resources for a few days, and I'm going to be happy with that done. I took a train to Chicago earlier this year, and I thought I was going to do that. I thought I was going to get a lot done while I was there. And I had time to sit down while I was there, but I just kind of hammered out my next sermon, and that was about it. Did not really get that much usage out of the time. The second thing going into this study retreat, order whatever supplies you think you're going to need. I'm a big analog person. I use Evernote. I'm going to talk about Evernote in my study retreat in just a few moments. But I do a lot of handwriting stuff. I do a lot of diagramming. It's just a way that I work. If you follow me on Instagram, you'll see sometimes I take pictures of what it's a lot of chicken scratch. It's a lot of colors. It's crazy. It's weird, but it's what works for me. I knew I was going to need some new notebooks, and I was going to get access to a couple of more things to make sure I had all the supplies I might so ordered a couple new Rhodia notebooks. I'm a big fan of Rhodia notebooks because I use fountain pens. I'm also planning on re-inking most of my pens before I leave, so I know I'm going with full pens. That sounds really super nerdy, but I'm all right with that. The third thing for your pre-work is just to build out whatever digital note-taking systems that you need. For me, it's my Evernote templates, and as far as I can in advance, then pre-linking those Evernote templates into Trello. I've talked about that in a couple of other places. If you have questions, just hit me up on Twitter about that, and I can explain what that looks like to you and find those resources for you. But so I went ahead and this morning at about 5 o'clock in the morning when I woke up, my first task was I built out 4 months of Evernote sermon note files and dropped them into Trello and built the Trello boards out for them. That is primarily used for my team to be aware of what's going on. So that's places like I drop my big idea, or as I like to call it, my Monday moment. That's where I put my primary scripture references. That is where I will drop resources, we'll work through things. I'm not primarily working out of that Evernote file, but it's very handy for my team to know and to have that there. The next thing that I did in my pre-work is I printed out whatever sermon sheets I was going to need. This meant about 15 of my own sermon worksheets. That's an old resource that is still floating around that you can grab that on the website. I printed out a bunch of those and just have them ready to go. I also, in the last few weeks, have gone back old school and have been using the Rocket Company's 4 questions. And I made a worksheet with those 4 questions on there, and I just have that, and it's actually, I printed them out, and I made them to be front and back, so I just have 15 pieces of paper, and I stuck them in a folder. The next thing is just to map out the time that you have. So I am going to be there for roughly 3 full days. And I'm going to talk more about where I'm going in a second because I'm really excited about that. And so I mapped out the time that I had. And the next thing that is part of mapping that out is set some goals. So my goals going into this study retreat are going to be to absolutely fight for hardcore margin for the next few weeks, to do some legit long-term focus work on a series in Jonah that I'm going to be preaching in March and in April. And then to line out some big pictures and big ideas. Essentially what I'm doing is I want to try out Brian Jones's strategy of writing your sermons on Monday. And so I'm going to try to get myself 6 weeks ahead of work that can really and truly be done anywhere. For me in my sermon process, most of Mondays and Tuesdays is word study and it's dictionary study. And I can do that very far in advance. And so I'm going to try to get really far out in word study and dictionary study, and then try to do super, super deep with a few weeks worth of work so I can begin getting about 3 weeks out at any given time in my preaching. This is like an oil change for me. Like I want to start doing this twice a year just to keep things taken care of. So The next thing is find a few things to be excited about. Now, I'm going to Northwest Houston, some places I have friends there, so I've kind of lined up some things to do in the evening with some friends. My favorite, and I'm like, if you follow me on Instagram, you know this. I'm a big, big, big fan of artisanal and boutique cigars, and one of the largest cigar shops in the South is only a couple of miles away from my hotel. So I'm planning on spending a little bit of time at this cigar lounge. Super stoked about it. And that's what's going on. The next thing is find a great place to do it. And I made this list just randomly on a walk one night in Evernote. I probably should have ordered it a little bit better, but find a great place to go. So here's what's going on. I'm going to Houston, and I'm primarily going because of the Lanier Theological Library there. I think it's the largest private theological library in the country, and it's gorgeous and it's beautiful. And from Instagram, it looks like Hogwarts. And I'm not that big of a Harry Potter fan, but it still looks pretty cool. And there's like a 5th century reconstruction of a Byzantine church there, and I kind of am an old school church nerd, so I'm excited about that. Their resources are fantastic. I've looked at their catalog online, and I'm like, that place looks comfortable. It looks different. It looks out of the way and quiet and distraction free. I'm gonna go there and do that. I'm looking significantly more forward to going to the little cabin that I used to know of, and I've got access to a camp just about 45 minutes away, but that's a little bit too close to home, and it's also just not conducive. It's like, I don't know how much sermon work I can do in a place that's surrounded by 48 deer heads and a pool table. Do you know what I mean? And so finding this great place, and for me, it's that. If you're the kind of person who is not as book heavy in your sermon work, or if this was a different cycle, I could see going to a more quiet, silent retreat place and being extremely happy and excited about what I can do there. But for me, it's this Lanier Theological Library. The next place is find a great place to stay. Now, I am lucky enough that I have the resources to get a hotel room there. There are some people that are like, hey, we stay at a friend, it'll cut costs. There's folks that are there that I know I can stay with. My in-laws are like an hour and 45 minutes away from this place because Houston's freaking huge and it's Houston. But for me, I want a place I can come home to at night and like take my shoes off. And it's just, I want privacy and all that. I looked around. I thought about an Airbnb. They were crazy expensive because I'm pretty much in the woodlands. And I found a hotel that was like seriously in range of my budget that had fantastic reviews. And if this hotel works out, I can see this Lanier Library being a 2 or 3 time a year thing for me because it made this trip extremely affordable. For me, I wanted to have a good breakfast that was there at the hotel for free. That's something I don't have to worry about. I can go in, I can keep my normal morning thing of waking up at about 5 a.m., get my coffee, get some breakfast, and spend some time in study and prayer. And before I even go to the library. And then the last part of this pre-work that you have going into it is I've started it the last couple of weeks preparing for a longer stretches of thought work. The episode a couple cycles back with Isaac Hopper about deep work, like you can't fall into deep work easily. So I've been preparing myself for sitting down and for thinking for 3 and 4 hours at a time. I wanted to be acclimated to it. So all this is pre-work. This is a lot of stuff, but I want to make the most of the time I have there. I have 3 days. And I have 3 modest goals. I want to just completely finish preparing for the last sermons I have to preach because I'm going on 2 also. I'm going for 2 weeks. I'm not preaching because of vacation, and then I'm leading a retreat, and my worship leader is preaching for me. So I've got 2 weeks off. That's making this a little bit easier. I want to do heavy work for my Jonah series and do a lot of outlining, get my Monday moments down, that sort of a thing. And decently get about halfway into the week there, and then I want to do longer range planning and pretty much get to the summer if I can. And so I've set some goals. That's the pre-work is what's going to make those 3 days for me. So during the study retreat, be aware of these things. Stick to your map. Make sure to stick to your focuses. It's going to be pretty easy, and I can get distracted very easily. And I could get pulled away from this very easily. That's why I decided to do this Productive Pastor meetup, because there's a lot of folks that listen to this show and a lot of people I know in ministry around Houston. I said, you know what? We're just going to do a lunch. We're going to do a lunch one day, and I'm just going to respect that time so I can have this mindset and an extreme amount of mindfulness during this. So the next during piece is just make sure to have a note-taking system for long-term recall. There's been times I've done long-range study prep before, and I get to my stuff and I realize preparing long range and preparing the week of is very, very different, because you can be preparing long range, have these just incredible ideas and moments, and be there, and you get it all written down and notate, and you come back to it like in 4 weeks, and you have no earthly idea what you're talking about. And so, thankfully, I've developed a system that will let me take long notes focused on long-term recall. That's why I'm really going to dig heavy on word study and dictionary work and like a research level stuff. And I might start making some brief outlines there, because that's the stuff I want to do closer to it. The third thing, just find something mindless to do as well. I'm going to be studying, you're going to be studying, and just long amounts of deep work. Your brain's going to want to keep itself active. So I've been saving a YouTube channel that I found last week that's on woodworking, and I'll probably at night watch about an hour's worth of this channel's videos. Like I said, there's that cigar shop I'm super excited about. I'll go there. I'm going to bring a couple of books that have absolutely nothing to do with ministry or leadership or productivity or strategic design. Like I'm bringing some books by Steve Ranella. He's a hunter that I like a lot. And then my plan is to sit at this cigar shop and either talk to people and hang out, or with new friends that I'll meet there, or to read these books about like hunting buffalo in Alaska. And that kind of like falls into this idea of just doing something fun in the evening, like find some different things. Like I know that in Houston, there's some restaurants and stuff that I can't find in North Louisiana. And so I'm making plans on doing those. And so I'm excited. I am super, super excited about what this study retreat is going to look like. And have you ever taken one? I don't know. I want to hear about your study retreats. The best way to do that is to jump on to Twitter at Rev Chad Brooks, or to join the Productive Pastor community, because we'll start some threads, and we'll have some threads about study retreats. And I would love to hear it. There's a great thread right now in the Productive Pastor community about showing people's workspaces that somebody else started, and I'm loving having the time to kind of snoop in with those and see what's going on. And so I want to hear about your study retreats and your study retreat activities. So thank you so much for me. Man, it's my own voice, but it was 5 years ago. And it's kind of wild listening to it. But that was a cool throwback, and I've gotten into almost all of the archives. We have the ability to pull some of these back up, so that's going to be sharing with you every single Thursday during this month. I also have something else going on this month that I'm creating margin for. Taking place in a writing cohort called Ship 30, where I will be writing 30 essays every single day on Twitter about productivity, time management, all those sorts of things, the Productive Pastor ecosystem of thought. And if you don't follow me over on Twitter yet, I don't talk about Twitter that much, but I would love for you to come follow and hang out and be part of that. My Twitter handle, like everywhere else, is at Rev Chad Brooks. And this is another one of those experiments to hone in on the conversations that I'm going to be hosting with the larger community across the year. So we'd love to have you come hang out there. But thanks so much for being part of this. The throwbacks are great. Come over to the Productive Pastor community. If there's an episode that you remember that you would kind of like to hear brought back again. And so, I'm Chad Brooks. It is great to host y'all here, and I will see y'all back in the next episode.